Welcome to IndiaPodcasts.
It's a disappointment. Even if we get downgraded, how does it matter? Because we don't borrow overseas. The nation does not borrow overseas.
I hope that they move as fast as possible.
Welcome to another episode with me, Anku Goyal. As we are stepping closer towards the end of Lockdown 4, the concern for the revival of economy is growing faster. Whether the 20 lakh crore financial stimulus package announced by Finance Minister will be good enough to revive the economy and kickstart it after the lockdown is lifted is the main contention today. To discuss this in details, I am being joined by Bahram Vakil, one of the founder member of AZB Partners. He's also played a very important role in formulation of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code as a crucial or important member in the Bankruptcy Law Reform Committee. I'm also being joined by Tamal Bandhyopadhyay, a renowned veteran business journalist in India who is known for his weekly columns on banking and financing through Bankers Trust published in Business Standard. He's also an author who's written several books, the latest being the HDFC2 Dawn to Digital published last year. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in your podcast today. Of course, the point of discussion right now around the country is same. I have with me joining Tamal Bandhyopadhyay, a veteran journalist, author. We also are joined by Bahram Vakil. So thank you so much for joining in, founder of AZB Partners. I begin asking a question, opening the floor, questioning both of you with the same question there. The economic package, much awaited, finally rolled out. There is a mixed opinion and a confused reaction, though. It has been appreciated with the kind of reforms that have been introduced. How are you looking at it? I start with you, Bahram Vakil, on your take on the economic reform package or the economic revival package. How do we look at it?
You should start with the real expert. Start with the real expert.
I think the tossing has come to the real expert there. Tamal sir, it is your turn to tell us how do you look at the package right now?
No, I'm no expert. So I'm neither an economist nor an expert. But, the question is it the time for reforms? Okay, is it the time for reform or is it the time for stimulus? That's what it is. Do we look for economic revival or is it a question of survival? So it depends on that. I personally don't think that it's a time. Yeah, I mean, you can theoretically say that we should not waste a crisis. You should do certain things which in the normal course you cannot do. So that's the right time. But I have my I question that. I would like to believe that it's a more time for survival than revival. Probably all I would welcome all the reform package. Some of the things are which for decades government had been planning, like the agriculture market, so on and so forth, which did not happen, it's going to happen now. But all the fruits we will see in the medium term to long term. But at the moment, we need more stimulus, which does not happen. So yes, depending on what was your expectation, I think the expectation was built up with the size, with the 20 trillion and the 10% of GDP. There's a huge expectation. That expectations have not been met. You have seen, you don't need an expert. I'm just quoting all the numbers of the research houses, both overseas and domestic. The actual percentage of GDP, if you see from the what has come, is around 1% or could be little less than 1%. So in that way, it's a disappointment. On the reform side, it's something. It's absolutely. I would appreciate that, but it can wait for the time being.
As Tamal sir is clearly saying that it is a matter of survival right now, but fiscal stimulus is also important. So how do we weigh this? What is important and the balance has to be drawn where?
Yeah, so I actually feel that it's a very valid points. Right now, it is certainly a matter of survival. That is very well put. But I think in India, unless create a real push time-wise, and I was, very privileged to work on the IBC law, and everyone said we are crazy to go for that 270 days and crazy to try and do it in 13 months. So here, unless you really have a push, things stagnate. So I think survival is first, no doubt about that. But I think, all these reforms, which are super important, this land, labor, and capital, without that, then competing globally and taking supply chains from China, etc., will not be feasible. So I think, unfortunately, we have to work at both levels. And I hope that they do the survival part immediately, and they do the other part in the short term. And so in other words, within months, and not drag it on too long. On the stimulus, just like you said, I understand that we don't have much space, and it's coming down finally to just 1% or so. But I don't know what the view is. That is it that in an emergency like this, can we bust our deficit and explain to the credit rating agencies that we have a nice roadmap? Okay, within 3 years we will come back to fiscal discipline. We'll come back to 3.5. But right now, like all countries, all developed countries have done, and some of our own neighborhood has also done, could we have been more bold and spent more immediately, especially for the poor, like that article which was written by Raghuram Rajan, Amartya, and Abhijit Banerjee, that should be the key thing. And then, of course, for MSMEs. But maybe they feel that this is a long drawn out, now everyone knows it's a long drawn out situation. It's not one quarter, it's many quarters. So maybe they are holding some of their fire, and they will keep doing this every quarter. But as you say, when it's survival, it's better to give the relief immediately. So I don't know. I mean, it's a very difficult choice, but I hope that they move as fast as possible.
Behram has actually raised a very important point, that he said, is there any choice, or is it a Hobson's choice? Because he spoke about rating downgrade. So yes, apparently it's a Hobson's choice, but I think if you're smart enough, you need to make a choice. So what is the choice before us? I understand and appreciate the constraint that the government has. So 1% of GDP, or roughly 1%, could it have gone further? Yes or no? This is the kind of dilemma. The dilemma is, do we go whole hog like some of the other developed markets, and then we throw to the wind, the entire fiscal deficit, don't care about it. We spend a lot of money, and then we run the risk of being downgraded. That's the fear. Now my question is, even if we get downgraded, how does it matter? Because India does not have any sovereign. We don't borrow overseas. The nation does not borrow overseas. There are a handful of corporate guys who borrow overseas. They would need to pay a percentage point more for their overseas borrowing. Period. But if you can bring back growth faster, then even if you get downgraded, then you will get upgraded very fast. If you are scared of being downgraded and don't spend as much as you should do, don't focus on stimulus, only focus on reforms, which will yield results over a period of time, then you will be, anyway you'll be downgraded. Because what is happening is, your economic recovery will be postponed. So the money will leave Indian shores. Foreign investors will pull out money, and you will be staring at downgrade. So, I mean, what do you do? I would personally feel that better to bite the bullet. I'm not asking the government to go all the way whole hog to 8% and 10% of GDP, but certainly it has to be more than 1%, maybe 3%, 4% of GDP. You spend the money, you bring back growth faster. Then even if you run the risk of being downgraded, you can be also upgraded if the growth impulses come back faster. Otherwise, all the emerging markets will overtake you, money will leave your shores, and you will be downgraded.
So, Behram sir, do you agree by this point that downgrading is the only fear that the country might have looked at, or the fear is beyond that, that how soon can we come back? So, opening the fiscal stimulus kitty like that, or injecting directly, might not allow them to come back like we came back after 2008 in 1.5 years. The fear is about the revival path, because this time we have entered pandemic after a crippled state. It is not similar to 2008 at all. So do you fall in line to Tamal sir's understanding or explanation to it?
Yeah, so no, I think Tamal Ji has put it very well. It's really a Hobson's choice. And I mean, I should make it very clear that I'm a lawyer, so this is way beyond my expertise. But I would completely agree with him that, growth is crucial. What we should be looking at is growth, because if you forget the denominator effect, I mean, it's a deficit to GDP. If your GDP tanks so badly, then anyway you're going to get downgraded, because anyway the percentage will go through the roof. So growth is the key thing, and the whole idea. Normally, what the economists, everything that I've read, is that as long as we do have two issues, which I would like to ask. One is this whole what they call MMT, depending on your point of view, modern monetary theory or magic money tree. So the issue there, one is, will be, given that we are not, our inflation levels, of course, recession always kills inflation. That is one solid economic truth. But given that our inflation levels were much higher than most of the world, and now that both, supply chains will take a long time to come back, hopefully demand will come back sooner than supply, then will inflation be a risk if you really spend another 3-4%? And two is the rupee dollar risk. So those are the two risks which I'd like to ask Tamaji, though I agree with him that growth is the way, because they say that as long as the interest cost to the government, the GSEC cost, is less than our growth. So, I mean, we should certainly be able to sustain double-digit growth. If you have roughly, let's say, even 6.5, and inflation of 4.5, you are at 10-11%. And certainly the GSEC is not going to be anywhere near that. So you are not going to get into a debt trap. You will be able to grow yourself out of this problem. And therefore, I would say, yes, it's time to be courageous. And these credit rating agencies also, surely, if you sit down with them and give them a clear roadmap, how can you at this situation not allow countries to have a little more latitude? Why is it okay for, the whole of Europe and US, which has much higher debt to GDP, and we are treated so strictly? So those were the questions I had.
Tamal sir, would you want to take the questions
No,
right
I have
away?
already answered. No, I have already answered. The choice is you will be extremely conservative and don't spend for fear of being downgraded. You will focus only on reforms, which will yield results in the medium term. For the time being, you will be negative growth. People are talking about 5% minus, and then you run the risk of being downgraded. Is this will do, or you do the other way? You spend, you bring the growth back. So you run the risk of being downgraded there, but then if the growth comes back, you will also get upgraded. So that's the call you need to take. So I'm saying, I don't think it's a Hobson choice. It's a very clear choice that you should go for the second one, not the first one. Because anyway, if your growth does not happen, then all the foreign investors will leave the country. Your currency will be under pressure, and everything. I mean, because they will see the India in comparison with the other emerging markets where the growth is back because they spent and the growth is back. So I think if you want to push growth, you need stimulus. Reforms is definitely a welcome measure. It can accompany, because this is the right time, it can accompany the stimulus, but it cannot replace stimulus. It can't be at the cost of stimulus. And 1% of GDP is not what we should have. We should have more, maybe 3 and 4%, not 10 or 8%, but at least 3 to 4%. Yes.
And Tamalji, you don't feel inflation does come back, you can always control it at that time. You don't think inflation is a big risk?
No, at this point of time, no.
That is not a major concern.
But I'm not an expert, so okay, keep that in mind. Yeah.
Bahram sir, my question to you is also about IBC. How are you looking at this move from the aspect? I would want to know from you being one of the founding member of IBC, how are you looking at this? How because it is a last resort that you had explained to us. Are you looking at it as a very welcoming move, or it will push everything for later burden to come by, and then it will be difficult to manage because NPS certainly will rise?
No, I would have preferred that, like everything else, which was done in a very conservative, phased way. Moratorium is every 3 months. I think the stimulus also hopefully is being phased. So just like that, when the Honorable Finance Minister said 6 months and then we will take a maximum 1 year, going straight to 1 year, but again, I'd be very interested in Kamalji's thoughts, is that you are therefore almost super confident that the RBI is going to give you provisioning holiday to the banks, because now they can't go to IBC. IBC is suspended. If you don't give them a provisioning holiday, then there is no other, to my mind, then there is no other cause but for the government again to write a check and recapitalize. Because the banks, we all know what condition they are in, and the NPAs quarter on quarter are only going to grow. So maybe the sense is everyone is very confident that the banks will give, RBI will give a provisioning holiday. Because otherwise, I don't see how this is going to work.
And how will it impact the cases, sir, that might pile on later? Do you think when NCLT, when after 1 year the cases start piling on for admission in the court, will that be another challenge for IBC? A new reform or new amendment should be required going there?
Yeah, definitely at that point. But they are working on that. So they're working on this pre-pack. First, again, the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned for SME sector. And then I think there will also probably be a pre-pack for all the other, for corporate in general. So, and you also know there are talks about bad bank. So I think they
Yes.
will have a lot of tools in the box, because unfortunately, as you said rightly, we came into this in a pretty unhealthy situation. We had just had this one, and yes, and now, I mean, God help us. I don't know what the situation is going to be again. Kamalji will have a much better view, but I think the banks are really uh, looking down the barrel of a gun.
Raman sir, will there be an immediate need for provisioning holiday? It's very clearly that he's pointing out at the requirement and how banks will manage it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the question, but yeah, but one other dimension I am pointing out to you was, you said that IBC 1 year holiday, so then there are a lot of case will accumulate. I would think that, look at the other way. 1 year holiday will give some breathing space to the NCLT. There are some 10,000 plus cases. Mr. Contractor will be able to say that 10,000 plus cases. So I would like to believe now NCLT, when it reopens after this COVID lockdown period, this some of the cases at least get cleared within this 1 year, because they wouldn't have fresh cases. So you there's a one-way traffic now. There's no more fresh cases. There are no more new cases coming in. So NCLT, which is not logistically, it's a logistic nightmare for NCLT. That's a positive thing for NCLT. They can tackle this. Having said that, I was expecting Reserve Bank of India to come out with some kind of guideline what's going to happen, because you are aware of that. I think 7 June 2019 guideline, which is pretty strict guidelines the banks have to provide for it. I think 15% provisioning for substandard assets. And so if Reserve Bank of India does not come out with a fresh guideline, so definitely banks will have to provide. So, the non-performing assets NPAs of the industry will go up, definitely. And B, the banks will, unless Reserve Bank of India tweaks its June 2019 policy, banks will be left with no choice but to provide for. So that will impact their profitability, their balance sheet, and you need fresh capital. This year's budget has not provided for any fresh capital. So I don't think it can happen, because you need fresh capital to give loans, the kind of loans the government has announced. Banks need to really go whole hog for giving loans, because till recently many of the banks were under prompt corrective action. They are not allowed to give loans, and also they could manage with the sparse capital. But now, if you're expecting loan growth, and at the same time you're expecting them to provide for bad assets, so definitely they would need capital, and the government will have to give capital. So I think the best case scenario will be 2020 bank balance sheet will not improve, will remain as what is in 2020. 2021 balance sheet will not improve in terms of those parameters. This is the best case scenario, because we are expecting that it would be better. And the worst case scenario will be probably we go back to 2019, the kind of weakness, the kind of load of non-performing assets, and the kind of the number of banks posting losses. So it's definitely not a good time, particularly.
Could it go to 2019 or even worse, because there have been reports stating.
Could be, yes. As I said, I mean, I'm pretty conservative, maybe. Yeah, even far worse. But particularly for the public sector banks, because they will now they're going back to target-based lending. They have to do this, and this COVID holiday, IBC holiday for anything related to COVID. Now, how do you actually figure out this is because of COVID I'm not able to pay during this time, or I'm actually diverting funds and all? So do the bank go for forensic audit, and how do they know this? How do you establish the fact that this is something for COVID related and something non-COVID related? So it will be a blanket, I think, IBC holiday for everyone. Okay, I mean, no. I mean, just saying, it's a COVID or no COVID. It's everybody, because you're not going to establish no, it's not for COVID. You actually diverted your fund, and that's why you have created a situation. So it's a very, very tough time for banking system, particularly for the public.
So there's an interesting point he made. I mean, is there a fear there? It is a blanket holiday for IBC. You don't know whether the companies are actually going to suffer default because of the COVID, or it is having to be diverting fund. Are you guys looking at that aspect as well?
Yeah, so I'll just come to that, but I just wanted to make one point clear that, from a regulator's perspective, if you don't provide for assets which are in that condition, then the accounts are not showing an accurate picture. And then you come to the whole problem we had, prior to Governor Rajan's time. So, I mean, wearing a regulator's hat, I really think it's difficult to keep avoiding the provisioning of assets which need to be provided for. So, I mean, just that one point I wanted to emphasize. The second thing, what the question you asked, I think it's until we see the ordinance, it's everyone is a little confused, because there is one thing which says that all new cases, 1 year, there's a moratorium, no new cases. And it's a very good point that Tapanji made, that that will allow I think it's over 12,000 cases which can be cleared by the NCLTs. And now they've, doubled the number of NCLTs. They also talked about adding benches at the appellate level. So hopefully they definitely should make good progress on that. But what they mean by COVID debt, I think that is still something that needs to be fleshed out. I think it's too early to talk about that, because there's no clarity. At least I have no clarity on that.
Bahram, I have one more question for you on the legal side of it. Now that we see there is no demand, we see there is no growth in the industry, the kickstart may take a lot of time. In terms of the legal aspect, can you tell me which are the sectors where, particularly from the legal point of view, you see a complete dip in your, because there'll be no PE investors, there'll be no M&A happening, there'll be no mergers happening soon, project financing, bank financing, all the legal involvement, the cases or the preparation of all the paperwork requirement, or they might have taken now back seat for the legal world entirely, judicial world. So how are you looking at that part of it? How is it going to impact all of the corporate lawyer world for that matter?
That's why both of us are emphasizing that you have to kickstart growth, and for that you have to kickstart demand. So in terms of the sectors, you have to make it attractive for foreign investment, both equity and debt, to come in, and make it easier, because it's a very competitive world out there. So yes, people will de-risk their supply chain, no question about that, and will look at other jurisdictions. So we should make ourselves ready to attract that capital. And in terms of the areas, a lot of it was there in the finance minister's details as well. The ones that we have competitive strengths in, we all know healthcare just now is doing very well. All the digital is doing very well. We have always been very strong in auto components. So basically, we should play to our strengths, is what I think. And in chemicals, whatever I read, I believe again there's a space for us. So all the API stuff. So there is a lot of area, and we should just make ourselves globally competitive and push those reforms. And agriculture, I mean, for a country like us, you can't do it without the agriculture reforms. So I think that was a very big part of the announcement.
So
And I
even
hope,
mergers and acquisitions would take a back seat now. So you think because you won't see new takeovers, mergers, and private equity investors all kind of vacating the market, the fear psychosis is there. How are you going to deal with that? I mean, from the legal point of view.
no, but I think that it'll be slower. I mean, there's no question about that until the economy comes back. There'll be much fewer, but there have been a lot of large ones that have still happened even in this very difficult time. So there will be less, and I don't know. I mean, as a law firm, there's not much you can do for that. You have to just hope for the best.
So hoping for the best there. Tamal sir, coming to you on, you've told us about the NPA baggage that the banks will be carrying forward to. Where are the areas opened for banks to lend? Because you've also mentioned in your tweets with banks saving a lot of, they're not in a liquidity crisis situation. The saving up with RBI right now with the reverse repo rate cut there. So are you seeing that there is no demand, or banks are being too risk averse at this point that we are not going to lend in the market where there is risk at all?
There's tons of liquidity. You must be seeing the banks are parking 8.5 trillion in the reverse repo window.
Yes.
And Reserve Bank, State Bank of India has started savings rate to 2.75. So that shows that what kind of liquidity scenario. In US, there's a flight to safety. People are sitting on cash. In India, there's a flight to safety. Everybody is pulling their money and going to public sector banks, which is uncalled for because every bank is safe. But still, public sector banks can afford to, cut the deposit rates the way they want because people are, it's a flight to safety. So there are tons of money. That's on the liquidity side. On other side, I don't think there's much of demand in the sense, yes, MSMEs and SMEs, they need to give money because of the government instructions and because of that credit guarantee, so on and so forth, which the government is providing for. But otherwise, if you see for the past 1 year, there is not much of demand for the corporate sector. There had been demand for retail, which now will be dented because people are losing their jobs. There's a salary cut, so I don't know how many home buyers and vehicle buyers will be there. Of course, there's a perception that post-COVID world, there will be a lot of auto sales will actually pick up because we would not like to share, in the taxi with somebody else because of the fear of virus. You buy your own car. I think that's a theoretical stuff. But so the retail loan, which were actually mainstay of Indian banking for the past few years, that's the home loan and auto loan that will definitely be dented because for the first time we are seeing those customers are being affected. Some of them are losing jobs, some of them are seeing their salary cut in between 10% to up to 50% salary cut. So can they afford? No. I think there will be default also in that segment. And MSMEs and SMEs, whether banks like it or not, because of the target, they will have to give it. But overall, I don't see there's a much of it.
So it is good for banks to go and park the money with RBI at this point in time because there is no demand for them to invest.
No, but it's a negative carry. If you see their average cost is higher than what they yield on this. So I don't think they are doing it. But good for the government because the borrowing program will be through because there is enough liquidity in the system. Reserve Bank of India also in the market, on the buy side, in the bond thing, in some way or other. So that's the kind of, it's not a very happy situation.
Bahram sir, even we will see that not new companies, no new listing would happen in the market. Markets have gone choppy. It's been extremely volatile. Is that also a bothersome it's a concern for people to look at that no new listing would happen, IPO cases would be less, no new companies would want to come in the market. There might not be any demand for that matter of fact. So how are you looking at that part of the market, and how should, as a legal corporate company or law company, you should be looking at it?
I think that there may not IPO. You have to be very brave, but as I said, people are desperately looking for capital. So there've been quite a few rights issues. There've been QIPs, and then also people raising debt wherever they can, especially working capital. So that's where you will have opportunities to do capital raise more in the rights and QIPs and debt.
You are seeing the opportunity there. So the last question before I think both of you would look to step out is this whole lockdown four phase we have gone through more than a month and a half. I don't know how your situation has been home individually. How has your life changed in the last 1.5 months? You can tell me as an individually, as a person, Bahram Vakil, you would come to know, and as a lawyer. Have you been doing too much of virtual conferencing now? Have you learned the trick of making the arguments via conference and camera? I mean, how has it changed
So
things for you?
yeah, completely. I mean, it's changed all our lives completely upside down. So I've learned all this. I certainly didn't know Zoom call or any of these. Now I know all of them, Cisco and Microsoft and Google. So way too much time. Personally, I'm not someone who likes to spend so much time on the phone and the computer. So I definitely miss out on the meetings, miss out on being in office. But on the flip side, again, on a very personal note, I feel very blessed that I have the whole family with me. 4 generations we are together. So that's very, very lucky. And I've been exercising every single day for 2 months. So there's always some silver lining.
Are you going to continue this going further? Do you wish that I'll work from home more? Let all the cases happen in from my room and let me be with my family while I work.
So I think a balance is always good. So hopefully I keep the good things like the exercise and more family time than before. But definitely work-wise, I'd rather be at work rather than this virtual.
Kamal sir, what is your choice? Has the virtual world kicked in you? Do you think you're a journalist sitting in the room right now? You want to go back to the field and be there, meet the bankers, do whatever you want in the real way, and change the thing back to normal or a new normal?
Yeah, it's very difficult life because I'm not a person who's into a lot of books, and I'm an illiterate person in that sense. I travel a lot, I meet people, so I have been feeling a little claustrophobic. But on the positive side, I'm spending time with my pet, my dog, which I don't do, giving him bath, taking him walk. My wife takes him in the morning and I'm in the evening. So yeah. I'm also indulging in a bit of cooking, cleaning the floors, mopping, so on and so forth, because there's no support service. And the biggest takeaway for me, I am learning meditation, which I've never done. I've tried in the past, I've never done. But this is the time I'm actually overdoing, probably. But I'm trying to get into, because I'm always, it's very difficult to. It's always I lack concentration. I just flip through multiple things and all. So I'm trying to keep my mind under control and trying to do meditation. So one key takeaway, like Behram said, is getting into exercise and all. I'm trying to get into meditation, and otherwise. No, my son is in US, so unlike Behram, where the entire family is there. So I'm not, and US is not in a very healthy state. So 2 calls a day to him, both morning and evening, to keep everything is fine, because he's alone in his apartment. That's a worry. And you try to, because the world will never be at least the same, at least for the next 1 year or so. So we need to understand the importance of social distancing, keeping safe, and also other part is this, which is not a very healthy situation when you go out on the road in Mumbai, where you see a very different kind of scenario which you've never seen before. The migrant laborers, the beggars, and all. So it's a very, very emotionally very disturbing time.
emotional journey for all of us. We all have survived through it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for finding time and for sharing your learnings with us beyond your professional capacity. And I hope, as you're expecting RBI to take some decisions, provisioning for banks is likely to come back. And of course, IBC, we have got a holiday period there, but a lot of work to do, as Tamal sir said. So let's hope, Ram sir, we see IBC and NCLT come back with a new thing, but less of cases and no new admission, even if it comes up after a year. So thank you so much for all your time, and
Thank
we all.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Brought to you by India Podcasts in association with ICI Healthcare for Pure Care Sanitizers.